Hi guys. So we're on to key issue 2 tonight, which is why do religions have different distributions? Which seems kind of like a silly question. That's okay. So we've got the origins of religions, universalizing it's a typo. Universalizing religions have precise places of origin. These are often based on events in the life of an influential man. Ethnic religions are generally not tied to a single historical individual, and they often have an unclear or unknown origin. So Buddhism was founded approximately 2,500 years ago, and the founder is Siddhartha Gautama. We're going to learn about this in our movie, Little Buddha, on Thursday, the 12th, 5 o'clock. Order pizza. The origin is in India. And we'll talk more about, well, you learned from which group? Oh, you learned from Cody, from his children's book, a lot about Buddhism and the beginnings of Buddhism, but the Buddhism group hasn't presented yet. Christianity is founded approximately 2,000 years ago based on the teachings of Jesus, and it is from the region located in present-day Palestine. And Palestine is close to, it's right there where Israel is. And then we have Islam, which was founded approximately 1,500 years ago, and the founder is the Prophet Muhammad. And the origin is Mecca, located in present-day Saudi Arabia. And you heard about that from Josiah and, from Nicole's presentation. Nicole was not here. And Simon. So that will help you guys to have a little bit of frame of reference. So Asia is home to the hearths for Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism. And followers have transmitted the messages preached in these hearths to people elsewhere. Each of the 3 main universalizing religions has a distinct diffusion pattern. Okay, so if you look at the green, this is the hearth for Buddhism. Right there. And if we look at the diffusion, so the solid line is the diffusion in the 8th century. Then we have a kind of dashed line, diffusion by the 12th century, and then a dotted line, which is diffusion after the 12th century. Wait, did I say that right? Diffusion by the 8th century, diffusion by the 12th century, and then diffusion after the 12th century. Christianity is the purple, so right here. And then Islam is the orange, right here. Okay, hierarchical diffusion. So Emperor Constantine helped to diffuse the religion throughout the Roman Empire by embracing Christianity. This happened in 400 AD. This is actually one of the reasons that the Roman Empire fell, because as people became less, I don't know, supportive isn't really the word, but less committed to the emperor and more committed to their religious beliefs, they were less willing to, support the emperor, less willing to give their money to the emperor. And so that was one of the reasons that the Roman Empire falls in 476 AD. Okay, relocation diffusion. So missionaries, these are people who transmit a religion through relocation diffusion. So these are people who move to other places or who travel to other places, and they take their religion along with them. And these people in the beginning are people who are going to go through sea routes, and they're actually also going to take the Roman roads and travel to different places. Migration and missionary activity by Europeans since 1500 have extended Christianity all over the world. This has happened in the Americas, Australia, and New Zealand through permanent resettlement. So if we look at this map, we see that the dark orange indicates areas that were strongly Christian by 200 AD. Then the kind of medium orange indicates areas that were strongly Christian by 400 AD. And then the yellow indicates areas that were strongly Christian by 600 AD. And then the arrows indicate the journeys of Paul. And this was the guy whose name was Saul. And then on the road to Damascus, he becomes blind and he kind of changes his life. And he changes his name to Paul, and he decides to speak about the life, the message of Jesus. So if you look, you can see, so here we have the first journeys in red, and then the second journeys in green, and the third journeys in purple. Okay, so Islam, Muhammad's successors organized followers into armies and led a conquest to spread the religion over an extensive area of Africa, Asia, and Europe. And then relocation diffusion of missionaries to portions of sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia transmitted the religion well beyond its hearth. And I don't know if some of you guys were in AP World, you learned about Mansa Musa and the influence of Islam and how he was a Muslim and his traveling and his all his gold and all that good stuff. We could talk about him and the crash course on him. It's good stuff. Okay, so this shows us, so the kind of like a dark olive green is areas that were Muslim by 632 AD. So we've got, here's Mecca and Medina, the two holy cities in Saudi Arabia, and then the kind of, I don't know, lime green are areas that were Muslim by 661 AD. So we're moving into Egypt and Libya, and then we're moving up into like Syria and Iraq and further into the Middle East. And then we have the areas that are like, I already used lime, another green, I don't know, what is that? It's like chartreuse by 750 AD. So we're going to spread further into Afghanistan, is that right? And then the rest of, let's see, Algeria, Morocco, and then up into Spain, Portugal, and yeah. Oh, it's really cool to look at the buildings in the architecture in Spain influenced by the Muslims. We should find some pictures of that. We'll see if we can find some. Okay, so Buddhism diffused relatively slowly from its origin in southeastern India. The Emperor Asoka is accredited with much of its diffusion throughout the Magadhan Empire. And missionaries were sent to territories neighboring the empire, and Buddhism was introduced to China along trade routes in the 1st century AD. So if we look, the dark orange is areas that were Buddhist by 200 BC. So we're going to see just India really, and Sri Lanka, and then the medium orange is Buddhism by 700 AD, and then the yellow is by 1100 AD. So we're moving into Indonesia, and then further north into Asia and over into Vietnam, and over here into Japan as well. I didn't see that at first. So ethnic religions, most have limited, if any, diffusion. They don't really have missionaries. It's, unlikely that you're going to have, like, African religions are out, traveling to other countries like, hey, you should learn about these African religions. And diffusion to new places is possible if adherents migrate for economic gains and are not forced to adopt a strongly entrenched universalizing religion. So if someone goes to another place and they're not, like, convinced to adopt a universalizing religion that's already there. Now, Judaism's diffusion is unlike any other ethnic religions because it's practiced well beyond its place of origin. So it's really it's easy to get Judaism mixed up and to think sometimes that it's a universalizing religion because it's so different from the other ethnic religions. So whereas other nationalities have historically persecuted Jews living in their midst, oh, hold on, just scrap that sentence and we're going to start over. So other nationalities have historically persecuted Jews living in their midst because of their retention of Judaism. So whereas generally when people move and come into a new region, they'll like pick up the cultures and the religion and the language and kind of acclimate to that or assimilate to that new place. People who are Jewish generally don't do that. They hold on to a lot of those cultures. They hold on to the Hebrew language and they hold on to Judaism. Even if it's like a cultural Judaism and not a full-blown like belief and practice of religion. Okay, sacred space. So geographers study the impact on the landscape made by religions. Places of worship are sacred structures that physically anchor a religion to the landscape. So Christians have churches. There's a more significant role in Christianity than other religions because of a belief that the building is physically the house of God. And the church is traditionally the largest and tallest building in the community. There's an additional significance given to it by locating it in a prominent location. For example, if there's like a town square or a center of town, that's generally where the church will be. There's no single architectural style that is what the church is supposed to be. So you'll notice in Europe there are Gothic style churches or cathedrals. There's Romanesque style cathedrals. There are older churches that are, very boxy. There are churches that are small, large. So there are all different styles, all different architectural types. There's not like one type of church that you have to have. Okay, Baha'i houses of worship are dispersed to different continents, and they're open to adherents of all religions, which is pretty cool because there are some religions that don't allow people of other religions in the buildings. I mean, I don't know what they do to you if you come in, but it's just respectful not to come in because they prefer you not to. Okay, for example, mosques. If you're not Muslim, you're not supposed to enter a mosque. It is a place for a community assembly. It's not viewed as a sanctified place. Attention to cardinal directions is emphasized. And we haven't talked about cardinal directions, but I'm hoping you know this, but it's okay if you don't. So north, south, east, and west. So for example, the pulpit at the end of a courtyard faces Mecca. And that makes sense because you're always going to want to pray. Well, Muslims are always going to want to pray toward Mecca. So if the pulpit is at the end of the courtyard and they're praying toward the pulpit, they're going to be praying toward Mecca. Also, FYI, if you didn't know this, which you probably didn't, which is okay. So Muslims have like a special compass that tells them where Mecca is. Isn't that cool? I mean, it's just like if you have a compass and you know where north is, you look to the to the east of that. But isn't that cool? Like, oh, this tells me where Mecca is all the time. So that's how they do it. So they also have distinctive features. There's a minaret. This is a tower where the muezzin summons people to worship. So generally what you'll hear is Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. And what that means is God is great. God is great. And so that's what he calls other things too. But they do that at certain times of day to let people know that it's time to pray. And it's a pretty neat thing. I'll try and find a little sound bit of one so we can listen to it. Because it's really beautiful, like to hear them call that like kind of through the morning air. Okay, Buddhist pagodas. These are prominent and they're very ornate. They include tall, many-sided towers. They're arranged in series of tiers, balconies, and slanting roofs. And they contain relics believed to be a portion of Buddha's body or clothing. So relics are pieces that are, I mean, that it's really explained right there, but relics are pieces of essentially someone who's passed away, either something that belonged to them or something that physically was part of them. And Buddhists aren't the only religion that keep relics. Relics were used a lot in the Catholic Church, particularly in the medieval time period. They would take relics like on pilgrimages, so they would take the relics out to visit people, and people would like give offerings in order to see the relics, because it was supposed to be like not good fortune. That's definitely not the right way to say it. But it was like good. You know, it was. I don't know how to explain it. It was like prayerful, and it was good if you went to see these relics and you gave them money, and you donated to the church for seeing these relics, and it indicated like your faith and your dedication to the church. And so like relics in the Christian church would be like, the veil of Mary, or a bone of somebody, or people would say, I mean, really even to the extent of John the Baptist's head, and all different things like that. And I mean, they really could be really fake, really fake, like a stick, and people would say, oh, this is somebody's finger bone. So there were some not real. I mean, this is the stuff that Martin Luther complained about, like some people who were not on the up and up. Anyway, so these pagodas, back to Buddhism, these pagodas are not designed for congregational worship. These are more about places of like meditation, and not where people all go together to worship. And you've probably seen these pagodas, like if any of you guys watch The Amazing Race, you see a lot of these pieces of architecture. And let me look in your book. No, there's not a good picture, unless I need to. No, let me turn some more pages. Oh, yeah, there's one on page 201 that has some pagodas in India. Let me see if it shows it. Oh, right there. So this is a pagoda in India. It's the Dahmek Pagoda in Deer Park, Sarnath. And this is from the 3rd century BC. That's pretty cool. It says it's probably the oldest surviving Buddhist structure in the world. That's sweet. Okay, sacred spaces, Okay, cities and places associated with the founder's life are also believed to be endowed with holiness. They're not necessarily in close proximity with each other. They're not needed to be related to any particular physical environment. Buddhism and Islam place most emphasis on identifying shrines that mark locations of important events in the life of Buddha or Muhammad. And then there are pilgrimages. So just like I told you, they took the relics on these pilgrimages. People also go on pilgrimages, and these are journeys for religious purposes. And these are incorporated into Islamic doctrine. So even though I said Christians would go on pilgrimages, and I think Christians still go on pilgrimages. I think there are people who go like to the Holy Lands. People like to go places where Jesus went, and places in Jesus's life. I think that's significant to a lot of people. But for Muslims, it is part of the 5 pillars that you make a pilgrimage to Mecca sometime in your life. That's the Hajj. And I want to make sure to point out that that is if you can, if it is within your means and you can do that. So it's not as if, if you're a very poor person and there's no way you could ever afford a trip to Saudi Arabia, that somehow that means you're going to go to hell. That's not how it works. It's if it is within your means and you can do that you go to Mecca. And everyone wants to do that. But some people obviously can't do that. Okay, so here are some important places for Buddhists. Okay, so up here at the top where it's kind of cut off, that is the birthplace of Buddha. And you'll notice that that is in Nepal, which is pretty cool. One of the schools I worked at, we were in Nepal for Kuna one year, and it was awesome. We did not, however, have a giant gold Buddha, which one school that I saw at Kuna did have a giant gold Buddha, and that was amazing. I mean, it was a girl painted gold. I worried about her a little bit, but it was cool. Okay, so then we have Buddha's sermon at Deer Park. So that was the pagoda that we saw in the previous slide. Buddha attains nirvana. Buddha attains enlightenment. Buddha tames a wild elephant. I think we'll see that in the movie. Buddha creates multiple images of himself. And Buddha ascends to heaven and returns to earth. So those are all important places in India for Buddhists. Okay, holy places in Islam. So the holiest locations are cities associated with Muhammad. And so we have Mecca, which is the birthplace of Muhammad. And Mecca contains one of the holiest objects in Islam, which is the Kaaba. And it's a cube-like structure encased in silk that stands in Islam's largest mosque, which is the Masjid al-Haram. And the second most holy site is Medina, which is where Muhammad's tomb is. And so the Kaaba is kind of hard to understand. And let me see if we have a picture. There it is. So here's the Kaaba right here. And here's all the people there for Hajj. You walk around it and you try to touch it. And there's the minarets where the muezzin is. So it's kind of confusing, but so before Muhammad, before like the prophecies were revealed to Muhammad by Gabriel, by the angel Gabriel, the people who believed in polytheistic religions would like be in the Kaaba, and they had shrines to other gods in there. And so Muhammad made this cube he kind of like changed the meaning of it when he taught people about Islam. And then, if I remember correctly, the Kaaba became important because I want to say there's a belief that maybe Mary ascended from there. So there's a lot of belief in Islam that certain people didn't die, they ascend. Let me see if our book says anything. Okay, religious shrine in Mecca for centuries before the origin of Islam. So Muhammad defeated the local people, captured the Kaaba, cleared it of idols, rededicated it to the all-powerful Allah. The same water source, Hagar by the angel Gabriel to quench the thirst of Ishmael. Okay, the Kaaba is thought by Muslims to have been built by Abraham and Ishmael. Contains a black stone that Muslims believe was given to Abraham by Gabriel as a sign of the covenant, and Ishmael and the Muslim people. I feel like there's a belief also that someone ascended from there, but I may have that mixed up with another place. So don't write that down anywhere until we get some correlation on that note. Okay. Ethnic religions are closely tied to the physical geography of a particular place. So, for example, Hindus are closely tied to the physical geography of India. Mount Kailas is holy because it's a home to Shiva, who's one of the gods. And then holiest places are riverbanks and coastlines. The Ganges is very, very important. And so Hindus believe they can achieve purification by bathing in holy rivers. And then the Ganges is important because when people die, their bodies are wrapped and then burned on a funeral pyre, and they kind of float away on the Ganges. If any of you guys read City of Joy, it talked about that process. And then also, if you've seen the movie Gandhi, you see that Gandhi's body was put on a funeral pyre on the Ganges as well. So that's really important. If you guys want to do a movie night with Gandhi, I mean, that's like a movie marathon. But man, I love that movie. It's awesome. Anyway, solstice. Special significance in some ethnic religions. Stonehenge is a prominent remnant of a pagan structure, aligned so that the sun rises between two stones on solstices. Okay, speaking of the dead, so climate, topography, and religious doctrine combine to create differences in practices to shelter the dead. Burial for Christians, Muslims, and Jews, people typically bury their deceased in designated areas called cemeteries. Cemeteries were typically only public open space. Oh, in congested urban places prior to the 19th century. I'm trying to think if there's anything else significant in any of those religions about burial. No, I can't think of anything. If we think of anything, we'll talk about it. Okay, cremation. Hindus wash the bodies of the deceased with water from the Ganges. Talked about that. Burn them with a slow fire in a funeral pyre. We talked about that. Also, there was the practice of sati for Hindus. Let's see if this has it. Oh, there's the funeral pyre. That's kind of dark. Okay. Okay, it doesn't talk about it. There was a process of sati for a while before the British came to India, which is where, in like a mourning process, the women, Hindu women, would throw themselves on this funeral pyre. And I always thought that they would just kind of burn themselves, like, ouch, I'm burned, you know, and then they would come off of the pyre, but I think they actually would die. So I'm not quite certain about that. So we could do some research on that one too. Okay, settlements and name places. Most human whoa, look who it is. Hey, friend. Hey. Excited to learn some human geography there. Hey. Are you going to stay right there? Yeah. Oh, okay. See ya. Okay. Oh, now we got to figure out how I have this. Okay, so most human settlements and serve an economic purpose, but some are established primarily for religious reasons. Utopian settlements, dang it. A utopian settlement is an ideal community built around a religious way of life. So this gives the example of Salt Lake City, which is for the utopian movement in the United States. It's built by the Mormons. But we have an even closer example, which is the Shaker Village. Shaker Village at Pleasant Hill. Is that right? Because the Shakers were wanted to create a utopian society. And so, remember the Shakers, I don't know how much you know about the Shakers. Guinea, stop. Sorry, friend. I don't know how much you know about the Shakers, but the Shakers believe that, men and women should not be together because their founder, Mother Ann Lee, had 3 miscarriages, I believe. And so she felt like this was a sign from God that people shouldn't have children, that people should not procreate. And so they gained new members by people joining or by purchasing slaves and then giving the slaves their freedom. And so a lot of people would join in the winter when it was cold. Sorry, he's like headbutting me. Guinea! In the winter when it was cold. And then in the summer, they would be like, oh, it's warm now. We're not going to be Shakers anymore. And so they were called winter Shakers. Shakers were known for growing for having like really good seeds.